She is antiquity's most famous monster, a gorgon with a nest of writhing snakes for hair, capable of petrifying a man with a single look, until a Greek hero ultimately cuts off her head. Her face has been plastered across everything from ancient Roman floor mosaics to the logos of high-end fashion brands, almost always framed as a vanquished villain or a cursed creature. But this raises a question about the mechanics of her myth. Out of all the powers the ancient Greeks could have imagined, why was her specific weapon a deadly stare? And why do we only ever hear her story from the men who defeated her? For centuries, Western storytelling has operated on a specific division of labor. Men are the active observers who drive the plot, and women are the passive spectacles meant to be looked at. When read through that lens, Medusa emerges as a deliberate cultural tool. She was constructed by a patriarchal society to control how women are represented, and to protect the male ego from women who refuse to play along. Recently, contemporary artists and social movements have begun to pull Medusa out of this villainous framework entirely. They are reclaiming her by focusing on a concept known as the female gaze, a defensive weapon buried right in the middle of her original myth. The female gaze disrupts the old standard of women existing merely to be observed. It grants them the right to actively look back. If we stop fixating on the hero holding the sword and analyze the act of looking, the entire power dynamic flips. We can see exactly how Medusa transitioned from an oppressed monster into an icon of feminist power. In the Roman poet Ovid's telling, Medusa starts out as a beautiful mortal woman. After she is assaulted by the sea god Poseidon inside the temple of Athena, the goddess Athena responds by punishing the victim, turning Medusa's hair to snakes and her eyes into a lethal weapon. This sets the stage for Perseus. He famously defeats her by using a mirrored shield to avoid direct eye contact, slicing off her head and holding it high as a trophy. This specific method of defeat reveals a psychological necessity for the storytellers of the time. By severing her head, Perseus strips Medusa of her subjectivity. Without eyes, she can no longer look back. She is entirely subdued. Even after death, she is exploited. Perseus uses her severed head to turn his own enemies to stone, and Athena eventually fastens it to her shield, reducing a once-living woman to a literal object of defense. This cultural drive to reduce women to silent, manageable visual objects was later codified by film theorists as the male gaze, a framework where women exist strictly for male visual pleasure and control. A headless, silent Medusa represents a complete patriarchal victory. The threat of a powerful, independent woman is neutralized by forcing her into permanent visual objectivity. In the 20th century, female poets and writers began rereading Ovid's myth from a new perspective. They interpreted Athena's transformation of Medusa as an empowering gift. When a woman is violently assaulted, giving her the ability to inflict an equally tormenting experience on her abuser, turning him to literal stone, functions as a devastating fantasy of rape revenge. To understand this defense, we have to look at the philosophical threat of objectification. When a dominating gaze judges and categorizes a woman, it effectively paralyzes her free subjectivity. She is frozen into a mere object. The female gaze shatters that dynamic. Medusa's ability to petrify the viewer acts as an aggressive countermeasure, a total refusal to be consumed or diminished by someone else's observation. This petrifying stare represents a total reclamation, the moment female subjectivity stops being the thing looked at and becomes the thing that looks. This reading of the myth maps cleanly onto the experiences of modern sexual assault survivors, who frequently bear the intense public scrutiny and social punishment for the crimes of powerful men. Even when credible allegations are brought forward, deeply embedded power structures often ensure that accused men maintain their positions of authority largely undaunted. Because of this systemic imbalance, victims are forced into silence by fear of retribution or shame. Medusa has come to embody the frozen, accumulated rage of those silent survivors. In recent years, her image has been adopted as a rallying cry. Survivors taking to the streets against patriarchal bigotry and rape culture use her as a symbol of defiance. For individuals who may feel entirely stripped of their power in the real world, Medusa serves as a vicarious voice. She offers a pair of unblinking eyes for survivors demanding to be seen on their own terms. The visual brand of Billie Eilish offers a contemporary study in how artists today still use aesthetic defenses to confound the male gaze. By covering her body in oversized, baggy clothing, she maintains a veil of mystery that refuses to be visually consumed. This intentionally maintains privacy and disrupts the relationship between a celebrity and the watchers who feel entitled to see her. These choices frequently invite criticism because they violate a long-standing societal expectation: the demand that women remain soft, that they stay constantly cheerful and visually accessible to the viewer. It leaves us with two irreconcilable identities for the same figure. A patriarchal society looks at Medusa and sees a terrifying threat to male dominance, while women look at her and find a muse for emotional healing and self-ownership. Ultimately, Medusa operates as a literal mirror. A society built on male authority looks into that glass and sees its own fears of female power reflected as a monster. But when women look into that same mirror, they find the enduring, life-giving power of finally looking back.